Okay, everyone, how are we doing? Let's continue the Celtic chat during this international break. John, you having a good international break?
It's always slow for me, Hamish. I really do not like these times in between Celtic matches. But, it was freshened up a little bit this week, given that there was a Celtic friendly, and I'm keeping my eye on a couple of international matches. So it's not as bad as it usually is, but still pretty bad.
You'll definitely have been across the game against Sligo. I can imagine you sitting there and watching it, yeah?
I did, yeah.
So what was the takeaways? Have you got anything?
Well, that's the thing. More fool me, because there wasn't really any grand takeaways. I think Sligo were up for it in the first half, and I think Celtic grew into the game and eventually started putting more pressure on them, showing a bit more quality in that second half. But it was really just a run. I don't want to get too in depth for that. It's good for. I think it's a good confidence boost for Luis Palma to get a few goals, just with the way it's been going for him.
Yeah.
He specifically opted not to go on Honduras duty, or Honduras opted not to select him to allow him to focus on Celtic. So the fact he got a trip away with Rodgers and got a few goals and potentially stake a claim. But again, I'm not reading too much into any of what happened in Sligo. It was more an opportunity for Celtic to show support in Ireland. Some people across in Ireland getting a chance to see Celtic in the flesh. So it was more about that really for me. And I think a lot of these young boys that were playing are still a fair bit away from making any sort of impact at Celtic. So it wasn't really like anyone's knocking on the door to get more minutes.
Okay, on the Ireland theme, I see Liam Scales has scored his first goal for the Republic of Ireland. They beat Finland 2-1 away. I'm assuming Sinizalo would have been involved on the bench, was he? He'd
Nope.
been in the... No?
He was on the bench, yeah. He was involved. He was called up, but he was on the bench. Scales played. Ida came into the game as a substitute, but Scales started the match. He played well, I thought. I thought Finland were actually pretty poor. Again, another I watched the full 90 minutes of... for my sins. But Scales took his goal well. And, the Scales story continues. His Champions League goal that last month, first goal for Ireland this month. I mean, the rise is incredible over the last 18 months. And it was delighted to see him. And Ireland ended up winning in the end, so they'll all be happy tonight. The support were delighted. So, happy to see Ireland win and Scales get his goal.
And England lose. That's always a bonus as well. Here they were pretty poor. I saw Arne Engels was on the bench. He was an unused sub for Belgium. I think they drew with Italy. I don't know if there's any other players in action at all.
No, I think that was it tonight. I think maybe Mitchell Frame scored for the Scotland under 19s.
Okay.
But that was it. I think that's your lot. And Ireland play Greece on Sunday now, so that'll be a big game after they've just beaten England.
Very good. Right, okay. Other stuff I saw, Alexandro Bernabe, a bit of chat about him. He's on loan at Internacional in Brazil. I think he scored a good goal a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure I saw that. He's apparently doing quite well for them. Maybe that surprises you. I don't know. It certainly surprises me a little bit. The talk is that that they want to sign him permanently. What are you hearing about this?
Yeah, so Bernabe's been playing well in Brazil. I've been kind of tracking him. I think he's started the last 14 or 15 matches in a row. He initially struggled. I think he missed a flight over, and then there was a subsequent thing where he couldn't be registered for their squad for some of their matches, and it was all just kind of a bit rough for him at the start over there. But he's really kind of hit form over the last couple of months, and is becoming a bit of a favourite with their fans. He scored in a big derby the weekend, and I think they want him to either, The club president gave an interview to Brazilian radio and was essentially saying they want to keep him, but they don't know what that looks like yet, and that it will become apparent. But they've spoken to his agent, and the agent suggesting that Bernabe wants to stay there, which isn't really a surprise recently. Bernabe himself was speaking recently about, struggling to adapt in Scotland, struggling to adapt to life at Celtic. So if he's found a home and he's playing well, then it probably suits all parties for him to continue there. What that looks like for Celtic, I know Internacional have a clause in his loan to buy, but it sounds like they're either trying to get that cheaper or trying to get another loan. So hopefully Celtic can just hold fast on that, and because I think he's playing well for them and they value him, so it'll be about all the financials now. But it seems like all parties will be willing for him to stay in Brazil after his loan concludes, which is at the end of this calendar year.
Okay. It'd be good to get a little bit of money for Bernabei if possible, because we spent a fair chunk, I think nearly 4 million on him back in 2022. Obviously didn't work out, but at least he's doing something. We've also had Paul Tisdale mentioned over the past 48 hours or so. We mentioned it yesterday with Stevie. As you can imagine, John, Stevie knew all about Paul Tisdale. I'm sure you'll have a wee bit more information on him. It seems like he's been talked up in the media. There's a few various outlets that have interviews with people talking him up.
Yeah, I think it was a bit nebulous when the reports first came out, and it was kind of like he's going to be appointed to a senior football operations role at Celtic, and everyone's scratching their head. What exactly does that look like? I believe he's going to be the head of recruitment, so I believe he's going to essentially be taking over the job that Mark Lawwell left earlier in the year, is my understanding. So we'll see how all that transpires. Interesting one. Obviously, like everyone else, didn't really know much about him when he's first mentioned. Been looking a lot into him. He's an interesting character. He talks in football business speak, shall we say? There's an element of that to him, which you can take or leave as a football fan. I think he'll be from what I've seen in the interviews that I've watched and heard and seen of him, I think he'll be a good conduit between maybe the board and the football department, and maybe that's what you're looking for. And I know that he rates Rodgers as well. He really rates Rodgers as a coach and as a manager, and so that all helps as well. So I think there's a bit of synergy there. Again, this is something Rodgers hinted at back in August, didn't he? He said that they were looking to review the recruitment setup, to looking to review some of the processes behind the scenes at Lennoxtown, and this seems to... Rodgers will have been heavily involved in this, I'm assuming. And Tisdale's actually been working with Celtic over the summer. He did some work for Celtic over the summer. Not sure quite in what capacity that was. Obviously in a consultancy, kind of a self-employed basis. He has a self-employed business where he does, he gives football clubs advice and gives different businesses advice, as far as I know, outside of the industry. So the guy is heavy into football business. He's heavy into all that chat. And I had that long spell at Exeter City where he kind of had a reputation for finding budget players, or players that at least fit a system that you can build a team around. And so whether that can give Celtic an edge in a higher transfer market and a higher, operating market remains to be seen. But it seems to be at least a progressive step forward for the club, in the sense of at least we've got someone in the door, and at least we're wanting to review these things to try and better the club going forward. Because I think everyone accepted, and Rodgers said himself, that it was just a bit too slow at the start during the transfer window. It was a little bit all over the place again until it started coming together towards the end. And I think Celtic can be better prepared going forward.
Yeah, that's it for me. We have to be better prepared because, the window may have turned out all right in the end, but it was frantic that last week, getting, I think, 4 players in the last few days. So, going forward, we need to act like a big club for me in the transfer window, and maybe with his expertise he can help us to get there. It's interesting, he's been working for the club or with the club for a period now. I know he mentioned the Queen's Park friendly, that he was doing work there in the summer, so that's positive. It's maybe been something that's been kind of in the pipeline for a while, so we'll keep an eye on that. Is that the kind of thing we'll hear from the club on? Will they announce this, or will it just happen? I
think they will announce it at some point. I would assume it's going to be next week at some point, if people are already being, if reporters and outlets are already being briefed on it, which seemed to come from the Tisdale side, because I noticed the Athletic down in England had it as well as Stephen McGowan in the Mail. So if people are being getting briefed by it, I'm assuming that it's pretty much done, and that's the kind of thing that the club do announce when it happens.
Yes. Okay, move on to your questions. Thanks again for sending them in. We're starting with Brendan Callaghan. A nice, easy one Celtic are struggling to produce young players for the first team. What could be done to fix this issue? I think it's poor that the last first team player we produced was Stephen Welsh. I always struggle with this one because it's like really difficult to put your finger on the exact reason. I think, for me, the two things that you need to have for young players to be coming through and becoming first team players, there needs to be an opportunity there for them to get game time. They also have to be good enough to take that opportunity, and I think both of those things have to be there. And when you look at the success stories we've got at the moment, the two real success stories in the first team are James Forrest still, all those years ago, and Callum McGregor, and they both had some sort of an opportunity there because they came through maybe when the team wasn't as strong. I don't know if that's a coincidence, but would James Forrest breaking through at 18 or Callum McGregor at the same age have got the same opportunities in this current first team when we're a bit stronger? I think it would have been interesting to find that out. But those guys took the opportunity, and they have to be good enough to do that. I think it's difficult because you wonder how much of a player making the cut is being given the opportunity and excelling and improving, but also if they're not good enough to really make an impression straight away, you don't necessarily see too much more of them. Like Daniel Kelly has obviously moved on, Rocco Vata similar. Potentially in Kelly's case, we'd have seen a bit of him this season, but like, how much would we really have seen? What was that a future first team Celtic player we're looking at? Certainly in Rocco Vata's case, I don't think, regardless of his situation, we would have seen much of him. So, the opportunity needs to be there for these guys, and sometimes it's like an injury that opens it up for them. I think that was the case with Kieran Tierney potentially. Initially, why he got his breakthrough, and then he obviously took that. But also the players have to be good enough, and I do genuinely, John, I do question whether players in the B team are good enough.
No, you're right. There's no thing that you can fix and just everything's fine and you start getting young players. Like everything, it's a lot of things added up. It's like what you're saying. You need opportunity, you need the right talent, you need a little bit of luck, you need the facilities, and you need places for these players to develop. Now, do I think Celtic are trying to address this and want to address all of this? I do think they are. Obviously, it's been a long time, and that's been frustrating. So, have they done a good enough job? I don't think they have. But if you consider that they've spent a fair amount of money on this Barrowfield training complex, which is for the academy teams and the women's team, if you consider that they've sought a link up with this Austrian second tier team where Matthew Anderson and Ben Summers are out on loan at the moment, who are in that bit in between where they're too good for the B team but not good enough for the first team. They've gone abroad to Austria to, have new experiences, play in a league, at the Austrian second tier of a semi-decent standard, to potentially come back and impress at Celtic. So Celtic have sought that. They have tried to tie down some of the more interesting prospects, such as Vata and Daniel Kelly. Now, there'll be two sides to every story, so their camps might have a different perception of how strongly Celtic try to keep them than perhaps Celtic do. But Rodgers did try to introduce them a little bit last year, or have them involved in the squad, and did seem to have some sort of plan for them and said so publicly. So there was a bit of that. So it feels like Celtic are trying to do a lot of things, but nothing's really clicking. But you do need all these different bits, don't you? You need the facilities, you need the opportunity, you need places for them to develop, and it all will hopefully come together at some point. But it isn't yet, and it hasn't been, and I can't really foresee it happening imminently. To be quite frank with you, I'm the same as you. I don't know. I can't really foresee any of these players, immediately making it. But it'll probably be a player that nobody's really hyped up about. There's a lot of hype about some of the young talents who really make their mark in the youth teams, and that always creates a bit of hype that's not real sustainable. It'll probably be someone who's less heralded, who can kind of quietly make an impact, make an impression behind the scenes, which is so important. like, it's so important for these players to be professional and make a positive impression on the coaches in terms of being people as well as players, how they handle themselves on match days, how they handle themselves on trips abroad, how they handle themselves on away days. There's just so much to it, Hamish. Like, we could go on for another half an hour just on this, but I think the point that we're kind of both making is there's no big one massive fix that Celtic can just, decree down from up on high and go, now we're going to start producing youth players. I think it's going to be a lot of things that add up over time, and hopefully we're seeing kind of the beginnings of that now. But again, how fruitful will that be in 5 to 10 years? That's what we're going to wait and see and find out.
Yeah, because I mean, when I talk about the opportunity being there, we've had really talented players. I mean, I go on about him a lot, but I think Ben Doak was a future Celtic first team player. I think he's probably the best player we've had come through over the past, 3 or 4 seasons. And again, as you say, there's two sides to every story. We've I think heard kind of both sides from the Doak camp and also the kind of Celtic point of view. And they are pretty different, but the reality is there that for whatever reason, the Doak Celtic story didn't continue, whether that was that the opportunity wasn't there or whether Doak was potentially just looking for that next move, that kind of better opportunity down south. Because there's no doubt, like, take your Celtic leanings away for a young player, if you'd rather be in the Celtic youth system with our facilities and the opposition we play, or down south at a team like Liverpool, training with their first team and all those stars and playing in that kind of youth Premier League 2 or whatever they call it, you would choose down south. So I think it's a difficult place Celtic find themselves in, but we'll wait and see going forward. Aidan O'Brien talking about Callum McGregor. It's a controversial opinion. Callum McGregor has been a better and more important player for Celtic than Scott Brown was. My first thought, Aidan, is why compare them? But then my second thought is it's a pretty interesting topic, so we'll have a go at this. What do you think, John? We were having a bit of a chat about this in our group chat, weren't we, the other week?
Yeah, a few weeks ago. I think my first thought to that question is, I don't think that's that controversial. I think McGregor is a better player than what Scott Brown was. Whether he's been more influential or more important, I think you could make an argument for both, couldn't you? You can make an argument for both there. They both brought different things, different style of play. But I think if I'm wanting to watch a player in full flow, McGregor is the player I would want to watch in full flow compared to Scott Brown. I think he offers a little bit more going forward. He's perhaps got a little bit better technical ability. But Brown had so much that was kind of the intangibles, as people like to say, the intangibles Scott Brown had, that made him just such a fantastic captain. And I mean, again, there is no real need to compare them. I think if I had to pick one, if you put me on the spot and I had to pick one, I'd go, I'm picking Callum McGregor. I just think he's a better player, and I think I prefer his style of leadership, that kind of quiet, leading by example type thing. It reminds me more of a Paul McStay than a Scott Brown type, that the kind of rah-rah type who uses different things, pushes buttons in different ways. I just personally prefer the Callum McGregor. The way Callum McGregor goes about his business is very impressive to me. Very impressive, very professional, and just exceptional. Not to say that Scott Brown wasn't those things, but McGregor is the man for me. But
the point you would probably have to make at this point, that it is Callum McGregor without having played under Scott Brown.
Not. That's the
so
thing.
Scott Brown's responsible for that as well.
Yeah. No, that's the point. Scott Brown is part of Callum McGregor's origin story, so you can't dismiss that. You just can't dismiss that. And I don't think anyone really predicted that Scott Brown would be the Celtic captain that he became to be. The first couple of years at Celtic, you obviously had talent, but I don't think anyone would have predicted he would have been a decade-long, win 20 trophies as captain type of player for Celtic, and the way he developed into that and grew into that role was quite phenomenal, and really did set the template for what McGregor's doing now. So you can't take that away from Scott Brown at all.
Yeah, I know McGregor's got a number of years to go in his career. I'm just thinking with Scott Brown going into management, is Callum McGregor a future manager? You'd probably think so. Yeah. I don't think he'd go into the media, would he? Strikes me as a coach / manager. He'd be a good one as well.
he seems like a manager to me. Now, it'll be very interesting to see how that develops over the next decade or so.
Okay, we'll put a pin in that for now. Right, Gerald Bailey. I always say Gerald Bailey. Luke McCowan has been impressive so far, agreed. Can you think of any recent/older examples of players signed from other Scottish clubs who have hit the ground running like he has? Who would be your favourite player signed from another Scottish club? Bruni is the obvious answer, but Paul Hartley, a close second for me. Was Paul Hartley liked at Celtic? When I went to the games back in whenever he played, I always had a guy behind me who just despised Paul Hartley. So maybe I've got a kind of warped vision of Paul Hartley as a player.
There was obviously the Hearts part of it, and you know that colours people's opinion. But Hartley did a job for us. He definitely did a job for us, and I think people appreciate the job that he did do for us. In terms of like immediate impact, I mean, Stuart Armstrong had a big immediate impact, didn't he? He scored against Partick and he scored against Inter, and
GMS as well, same period.
Yeah, GMS as well. So those felt like, you know, that felt like a big moment in terms of like an instant impact coming from United. All time, what are you going for? I know what my answer is. It's probably not the same as yours, so you fire ahead first with that one.
Is it a bit older, your answer then?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, I've got two. I've got Scott McDonald down. In terms of instant impact, I remember Scott McDonald going through a run of matches and not scoring until that Spartak game, but obviously he went on to be a brilliant player for us. Barry Robson, I loved Barry Robson as well, and when you're talking about instant impact, scored with his first touch famously, didn't he, against Aberdeen. And for me, Barry Robson, if you look at that title win we had for 3 in a row under Gordon Strachan, I think Barry Robson was probably the main catalyst for that, with his performances and his goals in the big games. Obviously the famous Christian Daly moment and the penalty in the next derby. So I would potentially go Barry Robson. I was trying to think of kind of more recent ones, and there's not been a great deal of successful ones. I mean, Greg Taylor at the moment would be one, but then you go to guys like Jack Hendry and Yusuf Malumbu and Lewis Morgan and people like Johnny Hayes was pretty good, but I would go either Scott McDonald, or other than Scott Brown, obviously I'd go Scott McDonald or Barry Robson.
Yeah, Scott Brown's an obvious one. I think more recently, it's Stuart Armstrong, it's Ryan Christie, it's those players. I think if we're going back further, it's our old pal Jackie McNamara, signed from Dunfermline in mid-90s.
Great shout.
Went on to have an amazing Celtic career. And that was really who I thought of. That's who jumped out to me, just in terms of longevity, versatility, what he gave to Celtic. And he came in and made a real initial burst in the Celtic team too, and then went on to have ups and downs at Celtic, as we've heard plenty from him. But it stands the test of time as a really good defender, wide player for Celtic over the years. So I would go for Jackie McNamara from Dunfermline. That's a good shout. 600 grand or something, I think it was.
Yeah, great player for us. Fabulous. Right, James Bonini, Aberdeen, and again we covered this yesterday, but let's do it again because people are talking about it. Prediction for their next 3, can they really push us? So they've got some of the bigger clubs in Scotland coming up now, Aberdeen. So their next 3, obviously, Celtic away, Dundee United home, and Rangers at home. How many points are they getting for those 3 games?
They're getting 4 points.
And none against us, obviously.
Losing at Celtic Park, I think they're beating United, and I think they're drawing against Rangers. And then I think they're getting beat at Hampden after that. So it's a tricky month for them. I think they'd be delighted with 4 points from those 3 games, though, to be honest with you. Just in terms, I know there's going to be a lot of hype around this game, and we've spoken about this. I think Jimmy Phelan's going to be trying to downplay that as much as possible, because he knows what the long road is for Aberdeen this season. The long road for Aberdeen this season is solidifying third and potentially making a push for second. And I think anything that distracts him or his players from that, you'll be quick to quieten down. So I think if you're asking Aberdeen, I mean, it's not for me to speak for Aberdeen fans, but I think if you're asking Aberdeen, they're looking at the next 3 games and thinking 4 points is really good, 6 points is excellent, and 9 points is just absolute dreamland. But I think it'll be more 4 points than 9 points for me.
it would be interesting to see how they would react if we beat them convincingly. Because, you know, as I say, they're going into tougher games. They've got Dundee United, who are having a good season. Rangers at home. I think that Rangers at home game is going to be a fascinating watch. It's a shame because I think we're playing the same time as that. I think we've got Dundee at Celtic Park that night, so I'd love to have those on different nights and sat down and watch them both. But I think we'll beat them. But it's going to be interesting to see what level are Aberdeen actually at, because, you know, we saw at a lower scale from Falkirk that when you're confident, you could see that when we played Falkirk. And I know we changed some players and all of that stuff, but you could tell that Falkirk were a team that were on a winning run. So you apply that to, you know, a better squad of players who are on an even longer winning run. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Aberdeen rock up at Celtic Park and how they play, whether they have a bit of a go at us, which I would like to see. I'd like to think that a team that have won, I think, 16 or 17 out of the last 18 would come and, you know, try and have a bit of a go at us, because it sounds like they play some good football as well. But as you said the other day, I think Celtic are going to be right up for that. Like, it's going to feel like a huge game, that one. I'm already, you know, excited for it, and it'd be amazing just to burst their bubble a bit and beat them, you know, 3-0, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said the other day, I feel like this is a game you get the old Rodgers glint in the eye, the wee cheeky smile. I think he's up for it. And then I guess we'll just see how it transpires from there. But recent history as well. I don't like to put too much on historic, you know, how results have gone in the past when judging an upcoming game, especially a new manager and new players. But they've taken, you know, I think they've not beaten us in 25 attempts. Rodgers has only been beaten by them once in his 17 games against them. I mean, to me, it's just there's too much evidence to confident, or for, you know, a hopeful Aberdeen fan is obviously going to have a lot of hope, but I think if you're using your brain for it, you're just thinking this is probably going to be a Celtic win, and hopefully that's what transpires. Yeah,
I think Aberdeen fans will probably think they can get a result, which makes it exciting as well. So looking forward to it. Right, finally, Jonesy Jones asking the big question, John, how long have you guys known each other on the channel? Is it from years ago or only when Ange came in, and did they have to apply for the role, etc.? How did you choose them, as you have chosen well, Hamish? I agree, although I didn't really choose well, to be honest. We've known each other for a good few years now.
It's getting close to a decade.
Too long
now. I would say it's getting close to a decade. Is it not 2015 or something? 2016? Yeah. So it's getting on for a decade. We used to work, but we worked together. We worked together from the start. Hamish was part of a team that we were on doing matchday content at Celtic. Celtic kind of had a link up with another company, and we worked for that company, and we were kind of embedded within Celtic and did stuff on match days, and were in and around the stadium on match days. And then obviously that project kind of fell away a bit, didn't it, Hamish? And then we just kind of stayed in touch, did a podcast together, and kept talking about Celtic because we seem to be stuck talking about Celtic and stuck talking to each other about Celtic. That's where we seem to be at the moment. Yeah,
grand old podcast. If anyone, we're intrigued if there's any long-term listeners still out there watching us. And yeah, Stevie, God, where did Stevie come into it? A mutual friend, I think. Again, probably 2016, 2017. And Stevie obviously had GigPod going at that stage. That kind of fell away, and then they relaunched GigPod a few years later. But he came on. We did some podcasts with him, 67 Hail, etc. And we kind of figure Stevie's quite good when he's awake and up for it. So it's good to have him on board. So no, it's just been a kind of gradual thing. Known each other for a long time, and yeah, we'll see where we can go in the future, John. Who knows what the future will hold, even for the next few days during this grim international break.
I know you finally escaped my clutches last year, and now we're back together talking about Celtic every week. So who knows what the future holds, indeed.
Right, okay, we'll catch up with you next week, John, ahead of the Aberdeen game. Thanks, everyone, for your support. I know it's a bit quieter during the international break, but it's much appreciated that you're all still continuing to watch the videos. And yeah, we'll do that next week as well. Speak to you then.